Hi, and welcome to Total Recall. My name is Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics, available in stores and online. You can follow me at Tom Scioli, one word, on Twitter, or you can follow me at Tom_Scioli on Instagram.
I'm Matt Zeoli, and you can follow me on Instagram at cinema_2.
You can follow the show on Twitter at Total Recall Show, all one word, on Twitter, or you can follow us on Instagram at Total_Recall_show. And today we're talking about Superman, the 1978 Superman starring Christopher Reeve, directed by Richard Donner. And what we did is we went back and read as close as we could to reading the original Mario Puzo script. This is Mario Puzo, by way of a couple other co-writers. Script. The Mario Puzo script is unavailable. This is the script that is like right before Richard Donner was hired as director. He wasn't hired as director yet. And Tom Mankiewicz, who we brought in as creative consultant to do like a final rewrite, is not involved yet. So this is what we're gonna get what we got a sense from reading this script is what did Richard Donner and Tom Mankiewicz bring to the table, versus what were they working with.
There was a lot of cooks in the kitchen on this one.
Yeah, let me just read it off real quick. Original screenplay by Mario Puzo. Final screenplay by David Newman, Leslie Newman, and Robert Benton. Producer Alexander and Ilya Salkind. Director Guy Hamilton. Yeah. So that's where we're at in this script. And sort of famously, Puzo had it stipulated that his script not be used in other ways. They were never allowed to make a comic book adaptation of Superman 1 or 2 from his script. So might be why, that his script hasn't surfaced.
Yeah, it hasn't got out there.
Yeah, and so I'd heard a lot about because again, this Superman, it's like a legendary movie, great movie. We love it.
Love it. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's a movie that my parents, when they showed it to me, it got me into movies in general. Mm-hmm. And got me into superheroes too.
Yeah.
It's a very formative flick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean same with me. Superheroes movie. Just loved it, and then I loved it as a kid, and then when I revisited it as a cynical teenager, expecting it to be cheesy or bad, I was like, wow, this is even better than I remembered.
And I haven't honestly watched it for a little while. I've gone through a Superman movie drought, and when you were telling me before about, you were like, hey, I'm watching Superman again. Mm-hmm. I'm like, nice. And then you're like, and I'm watching the Donner cut. I'm like, even better.
Yeah, really immersing in it, because just a quick rundown of the story behind the story is that Richard Donner and Tom Mankiewicz. Richard Donner came in to direct. Tom Mankiewicz, Richard Donner brought Tom Mankiewicz with him to help him write what his version of Superman is going to be. So there was already all this work that had been done on Superman, and then he came in and crafted it into this great movie that we know today. And he had disagreements with Alexander Salkind, and so he filmed both Superman 1 and 2 at the same time. He was so it's okay, if we're doing the Fortress of Solitude scenes, we're gonna film all the ones from Superman 1 and 2. If we're doing Daily Planet, we're gonna film all the Daily Planet from both movies. So it was that way up until a point where it was okay, this movie's late, we need to get it out. Let's just cut our losses and just do Superman 1, and then we'll figure out Superman 2
Focus
later.
on wrapping it up and getting it out.
Yeah, and then it came out. He had a lot of disagreements with the Salkinds, and so he was fired and replaced with Richard Lester. And so a ton of the scenes had to be reshot in order for Richard Lester to be credited as director. A lot of new scenes had to be created, and so we never got to see what Richard Donner's Superman 2 was going to be, until years later Superman Returns comes out, and they were using a lot of like the footage from Superman and the Donner version of Superman 2 they were using like the Marlon Brando footage. They were going through there, and then while they were doing that, somebody had the idea of like, let's bring Richard Donner in and let him like recut his version. So like he did what he could with what was available, because again, he probably filmed like 75% of a version of Superman 2, and then there was like 25% missing that he fill in here and there.
In the Donner cut, they said that they used some screen tests too, and then they also like added some visual effects from 2006. They created them whenever they released the Donner cut too. Yeah,
it looked like Brandon Routh might have even done some of like the long shots of Clark Kent and stuff that they needed.
That's awesome.
So now we have this Donner cut, which and when I watch Superman 2, that's the version I watch. It's got some really great scenes. It plays out a little differently, and of course it's got Marlon Brando, where like the theatrical version of Superman 2 doesn't have Marlon. They didn't want to bring him back. They didn't want to pay his fee or whatever.
He had a large he had a big upfront fee.
Yes.
And then he was like precursor. We know how from the Batman episode, Jack Nicholson working out that sweetheart deal he had for Batman, where it's like, I'm gonna get all these profits on the back end and be off for Laker games too. He had that in his contract. But Brando was like, huge back end amount, and they just dropped his scenes to like save the bucks. And we'll be mentioning, keeping tabs on the 1978 WB film office budget, watching over the movie.
Because that's like the sense you get reading this script. Like this script, it's got so much, like a lot of these scripts, these like first drafts we've been reading, it's got a lot of what ends up in the finished movie. A lot of like word for word lines and things like that. But you can sort of see the magic that Tom Mankiewicz and Richard Donner do with like tying it all together, adding a scene here, cutting a scene, or bringing some scenes together. And then you also see where it's like, okay, this chase scene is going to cost mega bucks. Let's just cut it out, or replace it.
As like, somebody's like a burgeoning screenwriter, it's like, they're like, you got to write something that can be made.
Yeah, exactly.
But then like, if you're writing it, you're like, this is going to be so, you just like, you probably write it and it comes out.
And the finished product is already hugely ambitious, massive scope, a million settings,
It's one of the, when I was watching it, like, I was like, this is like the biggest movie I've ever seen. Like, it looks humongous. Like, if I was in 1978 going to the theater and like I'm by myself, I might be scared of the scale of it.
Yeah,
like,
it kind of has that like Cecil B. DeMille like biblical epic, Ten Commandments kind of feel. Which again, like I think a lot of the like mystical elements to it sort of came from the like Tom Mankiewicz and Richard Donner part. Here it's a little more like there's a little more like logic described of like how this or that works, where like in the final version there's a lot of mystery, like when Superman's spaceship like crashes on Earth. Pa Kent in the script is like, oh yeah, I'm gonna come back later with the with the tractor and like haul the spaceship back to the barn. So it's, oh, okay, that's how the spaceship ended up like, in the barn. It's like there's a little more explanations.
It's like, I'm coming back with the tractor, or like if he leaves it, it's like somebody drives by and like, hey, what's that like smoking green pod out there?
Yeah, it's like a grain silo that tipped over. The movie opens pretty similarly to like in the script is pretty similar to the final version. There's like, it's on Krypton. Well, it starts with this little vignette in the 1930s in the Depression, and there's like somebody's like fruit cart or whatever, and then it like pans up to like this like tenement and crying baby and stuff, and then it like and so like you're seeing the setting in which Superman was created, 1930s, the Depression, and then it like pans off into the sky, and then you're in space.
Keeps going,
and then you're on Krypton. Jor-El delivers like a similar speech about these are not wild speculation, or and like the final lines that are used in the movie, it's something like this is no fantasy, this is no like That's not in there yet. That's Tom Mankiewicz writing that, where it's like, Jor-El is telling you about this movie, that this is not some wild fantasy. This is real, But so there's like a similar speech in here, but it doesn't start with the Phantom Zone criminals. It starts with Jor-El telling the council that he believes the planet's going to explode. We need to evacuate. And they're like, no. And then he's like, well, if you're not going to evacuate, me and my family are getting out of here. And they're like, if you do that, we will arrest you and we'll send you to the Phantom Zone. And then you see like a little hologram or whatever of they're in the Phantom Zone and the criminals, and there's like tentacles wrapped around them. And there's 4 criminals in this. There's like Zodnon and Ursa, but then in the script there's also Jackal, who I guess is like, he's like a rogue member of the L family. He's like, supposed to be.
What did you mention, like a Benedict Arnold?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like he's like the betrayer of the L family. I mean, it's just because of the last name, they don't like go into any detail here. They trim the foursome into like a trio for the movie, and again they kind of do that also with like Lex Luthor's gang is 4 people too.
Like a German guy.
There's like a guy who is like an escaped, Nazi war criminal or scientist or whatever. Who's the
other guy. And then there's Otis is still there.
Yeah, Otis is Albert, I think, is the name of like the German guy. But they trim him out, and like it's like okay, it works better as a trio, and in this initial script there isn't really a relationship established between Jor-El and the criminals. Like in the final version, they do a great job of like creating that animosity. Like I'll get you, Jor-El. I'll get you and your heirs. Like they set that up really well, and it kind of creates a tension that goes through like two movies. Where in here, like that's not set up. He's just looking at them. They're not. There's no. So again, seeing like a little bit of that magic.
Love that visual effect of them trapped in the pane of glass, flipping out into the Phantom Zone out there.
Yeah, it reminds me of this album, this like Sean Cassidy album called Under Wraps, and it's like Sean Cassidy, and he's like pressing against the front of the record sleeve. And like I got it after this is done. I got to check it out and see like if this predates or post it, because I'd love it if they got inspired by that for Superman. It makes a little more sense that like he saw Superman, and then the council is like, oh, there's too much energy there's an illegal use of energy at the Jor-El household. He must be setting up that rocket he was telling us about. Send the cops to get him. And then there's like this car chase, this like Kryptonian car chase. On their way to arrest Jor-El, and then the planet starts cracking and kind of the tension settled there.
We were talking about the how Superman, his like weightlessness to density proportions on
Jor-El described like because they're Jor-El and Lara, Superman's parents, they're debating like, oh, why do you want to send him to Earth? He'll be weird there. Oh, he'll be strong because he'll be very dense, and so nothing will be able to hurt him. And then she's like, but he'll be he'll be weightless there. His gravity will be like nothing there. He's like, well, he'll be able to fly, and like that doesn't quite add up for me. That he'd be super dense, but also like super light. But again, it's like magic science, But and at least they make the attempt in like the final film. They were going for like a little more magic and a little less, science. A little less exposition. I don't think it was noted in the script, but I had heard that like initially the idea was they'd get the same actor to play Jor-El and play Superman, so it would be like Christopher Reeve with like a little extra gray on the sides.
Yeah, would put some some flour in there.
Yeah,
and shout out to Christopher Reeve.
Mm-hmm.
What a performance by Christopher Reeve. Like, he's. The guy's in Adonis, yoked, blowing out of his suit, but can still deliver those Juilliard trained actor. It's like you couldn't like think that up in your like the perfect actor in your head.
He really nailed it. And so but they needed like big stars. Like Alexander Salkind had the idea that like to make this like to really get this movie to be taken seriously, you have to bring in a big star. So it was like, okay, we'll bring in Marlon Brando. And reading this script, the way they described Lex Luthor made me think that they were maybe designing Lex Luthor to be played by Brando, because he's kind of like he's kind of a little more of a physical match of what Lex Luthor is. And then they talk about him in this script. He's got a lot of like weird habits, and one of them is he likes to chew on Kleenex. He likes to put Kleenex in his mouth and chew. And so I was thinking like, oh, maybe it's like a Godfather reference, like that cotton or tissues or toilet paper or whatever that he'd stuff in his tricks for that. So like, it's I thought maybe it was and you got Mario Puzo coming in writing.
It's like I read in the script. He's like, it's like character sits at desk. Character grabs cotton balls, stuffs 5 into each cheek. Yeah. He's like, I'm gonna get him a Kryptonian crystal that he can't refuse.
Yeah, so it's like maybe it was like, okay, maybe Marlon Brando was like, I don't want to play Lex Luthor, I want to play Superman. They're like, okay, how about you play Jor-El? Like maybe it was some negotiation like that.
Man, and then we thinking back, like, what was going on the set there with those egos?
Yeah, like because you do hear those stories about Marlon Brando's telling Richard Donner that like he thinks that Jor-El should be played by a bagel with like him doing a voiceover because he's from another like he shouldn't look human. And then and same thing with Gene Hackman, where it's like Gene Hackman is playing Lex Luthor, a famously bald guy, and like he not only refuses to like wear a bald wig or shave his head or whatever, he also refuses to shave his mustache. So it's like, oh, and the only thing I can think is that like Alexander Salkind, from all accounts, is this like larger than life, like a character, to say the and I could picture like him, talking to like Marlon Brando and talking to Gene Hackman, and then being like, okay, this guy's nuts. This guy's obviously nuts, but he's got a ton. He's offering me a ton of money for like 2 minutes in this movie. Okay. Like, I don't think this movie's ever coming out. I have no, like, this can't possibly be good, but I'll take the money because, okay, whatever. And so then they come on the set just ready to bust balls. And they're busting balls from day one. And then, like, they meet Richard Donner and then kind of eventually get it that, like, oh, wait, this thing's in good hands. This thing's going to be something. And then they start, then they kind of loosen. Then, Gene Hackman agrees to shave off his mustache. Yeah,
like that reminds
or
me
got
of
tricked into shaving his mustache by when Donner tells the story.
That reminds me of the story of like these actors from like this 70s and 80s with these like directors, like alpha directors, like Sean Connery. He's like, my character in Hunt for October should have a ponytail, and then he gets roasted by John McTiernan. He's like, you look terrible with a ponytail, but he was so adamant he wanted a ponytail that like he's like in Medicine Man he ends up with a ponytail. He's like, you finally got your ponytail.
His vision.
It was Sean Connery's vision was fulfilled finally.
Krypton blows up. Spaceship comes to Earth, and then in the script it describes that like it looks for a moment that Superman's ship is going to land in Russia.
Oh yes.
And then it even says like it gives the audience a moment to consider what would have happened if Superman had grown up in Russia instead of America. And then like the world kind of turns at the last minute, and like he ends up with the standard story. And there is like Mark Miller wrote a Superman story where it's like, what if Superman was from Russia? Like, what if his ship landed in Russia? And so it's like an alternate history kind of thing. And, Mark Miller is such a huge fan of this movie in particular and Superman in general that it made me think he must have, like, at some point read this same script, and then saw that and was like, oh, this is this
perfect
is a premise right there. Yeah.
I love, like, when he's flying in his like pod, he's like learning, like doing equations, learning languages, and we were thinking back about like J.J. Abrams, if those images were used in a J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie. Yeah,
there was like a similar thing in J.J. Abrams Star Trek, and then there's like J.J. was working on a Superman
I didn't know
movie,
that.
like Superman Returns. Like he was working on a Superman that I think ended up being Superman Returns, or maybe it was I forget which one. But like he was working on a Superman script. He was going to direct it and write it, and then it ended up not happening. So like it would make sense if he took those ideas that he had from Superman and like maybe brought some of them with him when he went to do Star Trek.
That makes sense.
We're in Smallville, and it's like young Superman, and he's like baling hay at super speed. The Kent farm, thrives because they have this guy who can do like super chores.
Yeah. Thinking back, like about what we were saying when he's heading out of town, who does he say?
Oh yeah, he's like, oh, Ben Hubbard will help you out. I got Ben Hubbard agreed to do some of the chores and help out around the farm.
Isn't Ben Hubbard the guy with the bad back?
Yeah, it's like he can't bale hay at super speed. It's not, like when Luke tells Uncle Owen that, oh, you got those couple of extra farm hands, like that's a big difference, between like losing Luke and getting 2 farm hands and then losing Superman and getting Ben Hubbard.
She's like, Ben, it's not the same than having Superman around the farm.
Like then they have like a version of the scene that we have in the movie of Smallville. Like in the script, the sheriff, comes to the Kent house and he like leaves his pen there, and then Clark Kent grabs finds the pen with his X-ray vision, and then as the sheriff is driving back to the station, he Superman runs there, and then he's like, hey, what took you? Here's your pen, and it's all right. But then in the final film, you have that great scene of like Clark being like the water boy for the football team, and you have all this like 50s nostalgia, which was probably great for like the audience at the time, and Rock Around the Clock is playing, and they're all going to like the sock hop or the soda fountain or whatever, and he can't go because he has to clean up. So then he uses super speed and gets there, and then it still doesn't work. They're like, oh, Clark, you're a freak. Like there's a lot more interesting character things going, like like you see like the magic that Donner and Mankiewicz brought to like their final version. But again, it's like you don't get to that end point without kind of laying the groundwork that's in these first drafts.
And that's what's great about reading them. It's like I like seeing the process, and like for them to get to their final destination on the screen, they gotta write a scene before you.
Yeah, you gotta kind of write the wrong version before you know what the right version is. So it's like, and I'm in awe of what Richard Donner and Tom Mankiewicz did with the final version of the film. I mean, it's their film, but sometimes when you hear talk about like the early drafts of the script, and it was the same with some of the other movies, we did this with, they kind of like downplay how much groundwork is laid in the first one, and there's really a lot here, and if this was all written by one person, I think you'd still have the same kind of journey where you write a version that's not quite hitting the right note, but you're getting closer, and you change things, you take things out, you meld things together, and then at the very end you kind of bring it all together and create something amazing.
And then when we go through, we can't help but have our like WB executive like glasses on. It's like
of like scenes you can cut out, because like that car chase on Krypton, it's like cross that out. Okay, we just saved a bunch. We just saved a few million, and then and it's like, okay, we don't have to do the baling hay at super speed. Okay, we're done. We just saved a couple bucks. When Clark like leaves the farm in this script, he goes north. It's a lot of the same dialogue. And he goes, and a lot of the same beats. And so he goes north and he builds the Fortress of Solitude. Now, in this version, he actually builds it. Like, he uses his heat vision and sculpts it, and brings like the 4 walls together and builds it up. Where in the movie, it's like more magic. It's like the crystal. He forms
the fortress. And great special effects.
Great design. Again, because like in the script, you don't have that design yet. So like the design sometimes starts to suggest story.
And as elements. we reread these scripts, we like see what the the production designers are bringing to the table. Like when we read Batman, it's like the Batmobile. Use your imagination. Yeah. Some like talented like.
A lot of man hours.
Had to bring that to fruition. So,
so again, like you can see like Tom Mankiewicz and Donner bringing a little bit of like awe and imagination, like a little bit of like magic and like wow, reverence and stuff, like things like the fortress forming of its own, as opposed to like the script, which is very like sort of matter of fact, very like
you mentioned reverence too, like in the movie it feels massive, and like it's always like in the scenes it feels like people look small against, like they're always being like juxtaposed against huge things in the movie. Yeah,
great scope and scale, and again, like we've talked about this with some of our other movies, but like there was a generation of cinematographers who had decades of experience working like from the golden age of Hollywood onto here, and the name escapes me. I'll put it in the show notes or whatever. But there's the cinematographer that worked on this movie was amazing. And you'd get these amazing vistas and things. And then he died, shortly after the film was finished. And when you get to Superman 2, the new scenes that they shot for Superman 2 don't have that anymore.
They don't.
It's like you see, and little by little, as that generation died out, you do see that transition from like these amazing looking movies being made in the 70s and early 80s, because they have this like wealth of
just
talent, craftsmen and stuff, that generation dies out, and then it's like, it's gone. It really is gone. And so, and you see, like, and there's stories of like the cinematographer, he would do all these, like, he'd have all this like smoke and stuff, like, and laboriously do all these things on the set to get like just the right look. And you see you see like the scenes in the Fortress of Solitude that are filmed by Donner, and they have all this atmosphere, and then you see the ones filmed by Richard Lester, and it just looks like like a Frosty the Snowman special or something.
The guy's such a master that he can bring that kind of atmosphere from, it's like a Pinewood Studios set.
Yeah. And so in this Fortress of Solitude scene, it plays out similarly to the finished movie, where he's talking to his father, like or like a recording of his father, like an artificially intelligent, like, a thing that can answer his questions and stuff, but it's like, based on his father. And the technology depicted in the script is like more typical. It's like dials and buttons and control
like
panels, sci-fi, typical sci-fi, not like the sort of like weird crystal stuff. There are crystals in here, but you would take the crystal and then you'd put it in like a more standard computer looking thing.
I'm like, how do you fire up one of these things?
So it describes like, he's having this conversation with his father, his father's ghost, or his father's electronic ghost. And, you were talking about like how perfect Christopher Reeve is for this role, and how amazing. So there's a section of the script that I wanted to like read because it just, it kind of speaks to that. But it says, Clark asks his father, "Will I be accepted as I am?" As he asks this question, camera completes 360 degrees and a lot of years and comes to rest on Superman. And there he is, in the flesh and in the traditional costume, blue outfit, red trunks and cape, yellow monogram, the big S. A handsome, strong man in his 30s who wears the weight of his mission lightly, but takes everything with the proper seriousness. His intelligence shines through all the macho aspects of his personality. And at all times, even in the middle of action and violence, he retains a kind of twinkle in his eye that lets us know that he sees everything from a slightly off-center position, that while acknowledging his bizarre lifestyle, he can also see that it has its humorous side when looked at from the proper perspective. He is warm, likable, and generous, but when he becomes Clark Kent, the disguise takes on almost schizoid dimensions, a great personality change, exaggerating all the everyday normal qualities that are so inherently foreign to his true personality. And yet, as we will see, there is a part of him that yearns and longs to be Clark Kent, free from the overwhelming responsibilities that come unmasked from being who he is, Superman. Now, this was written before Christopher Reeve was involved, and it's like they wrote this line in the script, and it's almost like they created him. Like, along comes somebody who perfectly nails every aspect of that. Like, when I read that, I was blown
that's
away.
Christopher Reeve.
Yeah.
Like you get like the look, you get the acting ability. It's like
the depth, the two sides, the like it's like all these qualities, and like he just nails it. Like he synthesized. I don't know what it's magic. It's his Juilliard training, like this amazing, like that he read that script and was like, okay, I got to do this, and then he does it. Like,
the guy, like he doesn't miss a time in the weight room, and he's also like Cornell, went to Cornell, Juilliard trained. Like, the guy's got it all. Would they create him in a laboratory?
Right? Yeah,
or something?
And well, I mean, the thing that's kind of famous, like we were talking about, like the Donner cut and stuff. Like, you see Christopher Reeve's screen test. And he was skin, like he did the part, he looked the part, but he was like very skinny, and so like he needed, like, I think he went with David Prowse, the bodybuilder who played Darth Vader. Like, David Prowse trained Christopher Reeve, got him in the gym and got him to like sort of bulk up so he could,
We need to get you into Superman shape.
So now we're in Metropolis, and again, it's following the beats of the movie, just like a little different. It describes Clark Kent wearing like the traditional Clark Kent outfit, the hat, the horn-rimmed glasses, jacket, and then it says everybody else is dressed for summer. So it's already like he's already like offbeat. His his Clark Kent character or performance that Superman's doing, this like, okay, I'm a typical Earthling, is a little off. Maybe it's a parody. Maybe he's aware, or maybe he's not.
It's like, Clark, I get you're trying to fit in, and you're doing what you think Earthlings are doing. I'm like, ease up on that a little bit.
Yeah. As he's walking, like absentmindedly, like he walks into traffic and a cab crashes into him and is like destroyed, and he just keeps going. He's like, oh, hey, sorry. Some great. Great little bits of business.
I like then there was that robbery. Like that's an interesting I like how it pops out.
Yeah, because he goes to the Daily Planet and he meets all the characters, and it's like almost word for word what's in the final film. Like that's all there, and there's like a little extra thing about like a dartboard that they like throw darts at and put money in and stuff, and that's how Jimmy Olsen lives, is off the money he makes from like the dartboard game that they have going.
Great casting from Jimmy Olsen too.
Yeah, really good. Yeah, great. I mean, just like this is one of those like movies where just every aspect of it works.
Falls into place.
The scene in the movie where they get the stick-up man, where Clark and Lois are walking down the street and then you just see like a gun come out of the alley and they go like this,
come here.
And in this. It's another one of those Warner executive moments where there's this huge shootout, it's a huge shootout, and then the crooks grab Clark and Lois as human shields, and there's like all this back and forth, and like
that's gonna cost $2 million.
Yeah, so they come up with this solution of let's just cut that out, and it's just how much does it cost to have a hand with a gun come out and do this?
That day player, it's like $50 for a day player.
Yeah, so they come up with this economical solution that like is elegant and is like ultimately better. It's a great solution, but it's kind of cool seeing that scene, and so then there's like two scenes. So there's that shootout scene in here. And then immediately after the shootout scene, a purse snatcher comes and steals Lois's purse, and then that's where you get the line that, like in the script, you get the line that ends up in the finished film where Clark Kent says, "Oh, why were you?" Because Lois starts chasing the purse snatcher, but she can't catch him. He's faster than her. He gets away, and so then Clark's like, "Oh, why did you risk your life for a lipstick?" Blah blah blah. Like he reads off and she's like, "Those are the exact contents of my purse." So in the final film, they meld all that stuff together, but in this there's the purse snatcher, and the purse snatcher is Otis. So like I'm thinking they didn't have Ned Beatty in mind because he like he steals the purse and then Lois Lane can't catch him. He's too fast.
When I think of Ned Beatty, I don't think of Fleet of Foot.
Yeah. It is pretty elegant in that it does get you very cleanly from Lois and Clark to the the Lex Luthor scene, because there is a little bit of a transition and a little bit of like Richard Donner's sort of like cop show experience from like working on Kojak and stuff, where like it's these guys who are like on a stakeout and they follow Otis, but then in the script Otis goes into like a men's room and then he sits on a toilet. And it's an elevator. Like he rides the toilet elevator down to Lex's.
What a great scene! Because in the movie he's on the subway and the secret patches in the wall down there.
Yeah, there's a lot of like visual jokes. There's a lot of humor in this version of the script. And the thing I'd always heard about like the Mario Puzo version of the script was that this it's the writer of The Godfather. But it's not the writer of The Godfather. This isn't like a super serious Superman movie. Like the script he wrote was not like, people getting whacked and death and all this stuff. It he was writing, the reputation was that he was writing something more akin to like the Adam West Batman. And reading, there is a lot of humor and stuff, but it still does have a lot of like the scenes that we do know.
Yeah, the jokes still landed. I was laughing out loud.
Yeah, yeah, the jokes are good, but it still is. There is a drama to it, and it is taking the drama seriously, to a certain extent. So then we get Lex Luthor, we get to Lex Luthor, and it's like the same gang he had. And Otis is like a purse snatcher in this script. I don't think that's as much of a thing in that's not really a thing in the movie, but he's a purse snatcher, and anytime Lex needs something, he just has Otis steal it for him. So he has him like he's like, oh, like I'm hungry, go steal some Big Macs.
I love that. What a treat seeing like two great '70s actors, Ned Beatty and Gene Hackman. What a treat.
Yeah, all we needed was like Burt Reynolds.
Burt Reynolds he comes down into his lair, he pops out of the water with a wetsuit with the sleeves cut off.
Yeah, maybe he could have played Albert. There's like a fourth member of Lex Luthor's gang, Albert, who's like a Nazi war criminal or something, and he's providing like a lot of the science that they, like the bombs and stuff that they need, and doesn't make the final cut of the movie. And in this script, Lex has this like model of that area where there's going to be all the earthquakes and explosions and stuff later.
Yeah.
And he has this like perfect model of it, which they do kind of like explode and again it's like like they read this script when they made Superman Returns, because in Superman Returns it's like the same thing of like a big model that like blows up. It's like straight out of here.
I love like also the production design in the flick too, of like Lex Luthor's lair under in the subway.
Yeah.
What a like he has all the books and then like his swimming pool and stuff down there.
Yeah, and it's like the old Grand Central Station or old Pennsylvania Station or whatever it is. It's and in this like and that stuff is in the script. Like he it's all the talk about Park Avenue address, but we're under Park Avenue. And then he has a giant aquarium, and this is like the punishment if Otis messes up, he has to feed the aquarium, and the description of the aquarium is so like horrific and disgusting, and you kind of wonder like how they could have even pulled it off. Which again, we'll just cross that off.
We're WB execs. Up that scene.
Yeah, but it's an aquarium made up of all the alligators, baby alligators that were flushed down. So it's all these albino alligators. It's rats. I forget what else. They were like,
the alligators. We were just talking about alligators in the sewer.
Yeah, and so it's like, and so when Otis has to like feed he goes out onto this like platform that's like right above, and they're all like jumping up and biting out. Isn't this script's a great read?
What a great read! And like, man, what if only. I'm still thinking about Burt Reynolds.
You're still trying to figure out a role
for if we wouldn't be able to do the episode if Reynolds popped up. My head would have exploded.
Yeah, maybe he could have been the extra member of the Phantom Zone criminal. He could have been Jack L.
Wait, yeah, we're it's the double Donner cut or whatever.
Right.
It's like...
Now this must have been some reference that like made sense back in the 70s. I don't know what they're talking, but it's like he's talking about like every turtle that had like an American flag painted on its back or a design painted on its back is also there too. So I guess that was like a thing you'd like
maybe the bicentennial or something.
Yeah, maybe you'd like buy a turtle and somebody would paint, like you'd buy a baby turtle and somebody would paint something on the back, and then I guess kids would flush them or like I didn't get the reference, but they're in this aquarium too. It's like all the stuff that gets flushed. So then we have like the thing at the Daily Planet where like Lois he's like, I'm gonna go. She's like, I'm gonna go interview. In this, it's the Secretary of Defense. In the movie, she says, you know who, and it's like she's talking about the president. She's gonna interview the president, but here it's the Secretary of Defense. And then that's why she's like getting in the helicopter, and then you have that like famous helicopter.
What a great action scene! Like great practical effects. Gets caught up in the cables from the lights and hanging over the side, and so we have to have our first Superman appearance.
Yeah, this is where Superman gets like revealed to the world, and in the script you can see like how when it comes time to make this scene, it's a lot of the same beats, but they do transform it. Like in this, in the script, the helicopter never falls. Yes. like in the movie, they kind of escalated it really to make it where like the helicopter falls. And then Superman, and Superman grabs Lois Lane, and then he grabs the helicopter, and the people down below are like they refer to it as like the double jeopardy scene. And like those elements aren't here. There's the helicopter. She's hanging out of the helicopter. Superman rescues her, but it's like, yeah, they amped it up like hugely.
And she's like trying to climb over the pilot to make her escape.
Yeah, and the pilot's like still awake. Like it was a good move to have like the pilots and everybody, the crew, be kind of like unconscious,
out of commission. Yeah.
In the movie, you have that famous scene where it's like, okay, Superman's revealed to the world, and so he's everywhere. He's doing this, and this, and in the script, it's like times 3. Like there's 3 times as many. Like they have Superman doing like all kinds of things, and and he's like in the movie, like the guy hits him with a crowbar, and then it's like shaking,
he's vibrating,
and he says bad vibration. In this, he's like bad vibrations, man. Like you could kind of tell the difference between like this being written in like sort of 75, 76, like a little closer to the 60s, and then like 78 when it comes out, where it's like, okay, we're out of like the hippie era and into like the disco era, because it is like the criminals in here, it's like heroin, where I feel like if the drug scenes would have made it into the final film, it would have been cocaine.
Yeah. It's like bad vibrations, man.
Like the man, eliminating the man part and then having Christopher Reeve's read on it. It is different. Like so like he does a million things, and then it's the 70s. Superman stops a bunch of graffiti artists. There's a bunch of kids who are about to like bust their tags and do some like burner, and Superman, like with his heat vision, he beats them to, like with his heat vision, he writes in letters like, do not write on this wall. Like he's like he's like a narc or something, like he's like on the wrong side of history, and does his own graffiti. Now I imagine his heat letters like will fade away, but the kids get scared and they run away. So like there's that extra bit. I mean, the script is weird. Like it is very
weird,
like kind of in a beautiful way, and you understand why they had to like tone some aspects down and move some things around.
It's like from the author of The Godfather, which makes it even another layer of weirdness.
Well, and there is like some like organized crime aspects, because also during this like scene of Superman like doing all this stuff, there's like some they describe mafioso who take a guy in cement shoes and like throw him in the water, and then Superman goes in the water, fishes the guy out, and then puts him down, and he's like wobbling. They describe him wobbling back and forth like one of those punch-em dolls. He's wobbling back and forth with the cement shoes still on. It's just like one thing after another, and then Superman does a drug bust, which never showed up in any of the movies that I can tell. Like they sort of sidestepped like drugs or the war on drugs or whatever. But it is like the movie becomes like RoboCop for a minute, because he goes in this like drug lab, and it's like it's heroin, and there's just powder everywhere, and then Superman does his super breath, and then it like blows everywhere.
Well, yeah, he's like inhale. He inhales all the drugs, and he's like, "Don't worry, I'm impervious." And then like the crystal opens up, and he's like, "Superman, I wanted to let her." He's like, "Kal-El, I want to let you know you're still affected by heroin." It's like the one thing after he inhales it all, and he's like. He flies to like the methadone clinic.
he blows it, and then there's like a bunch of guys who are just covered with powder in it, and so it's like it's like we never saw anything like that in a Superman movie. Still haven't. Maybe the Snyder cut of Justice League will have this. Oh, and it describes the dope flying like a white tornado. It's like this tornado of like Puzo or the or like the other people who came in. They really put a ton of imagination into this like drug lab.
Oh, I'm sure scene. like with the like your Frankenheimers, your William Friedkins, all these like 70s, the Don Simpson, Jerry Bruckheimer. He's like. A white tornado of drugs. He's like, I like that. Leave that in. Like,
then like we're back at the Daily Planet, and then Perry White says, go, like somebody interview this guy. Whoever interviews this guy gets the best interview since God talked to Moses. In this, it's like, you'll make Woodward and Bernstein look like Abbott and Costello is the line, and But like that scene doesn't in the script. That scene doesn't happen yet, and instead it's like that scene where Superman hears with his like super hearing that like Lex Luthor is gonna have poison gas that's gonna kill like most of the city or whatever. And in this, it's like Lex Luthor broadcasts it on TV. This message, like the Joker in Batman. He goes on TV and he says, "I'm gonna, somewhere in the city, there's this mechanism where a pellet is gonna drop in acid and it's gonna release this poison gas that's gonna kill all these people in the city." And so then Superman has to go stop it. And then in the movie, like that's where he meets and has his big encounter with Lex Luthor. And then we're off to like the third act of the movie. But in this is just the beginning of a series of capers that Lex Luthor does that Superman gets involved in. So in the movie, Lex Luthor's like, oh, there's not really a pellet. Like that was just it's just up here. What kind of sick mind? It's up here. But in this, there literally is that pellet. Like it, and Superman has to get to it. So before it drops in the acid, he like eats it. And then he grabs the acid and like it's like a chaser, and then and then he burps. He's like,
well, gotta go back to the method.
Like in that like Superman TV show from the 90s, The Adventures of Lois and Clark. Like when Superman first meets Lois Lane, in that like it's a similar thing. Like there's like a bomb, and then he eats it. And then it like explodes, and then he burps in Lois's face. And this is like their first meeting in The Adventures of Lois and Clark. And then she's like, "Oh, I'm in love." And like that always struck me as so odd. Like their first meeting, he like belches in her face, like, and she's in love.
She's like, "The man of my dreams."
Yeah. Like I think it's okay to have Superman like eat something and belch, but it can't be his first. It can't be Lois Lane's first impression. Like here, like she falls in love with him in a much different set. Like she wasn't there. That's like a scene that is a scene in the script, but then in the final film gets kind of sidestepped. It's like, you don't see, it's just words. And then there's like a similar thing where Addis Ababa, they go to Addis Ababa to get this kryptonite meteor, Lex and his gang. And in the film, they just describe it. Like he describes, we're going to Addis Ababa. And then the next scene is like Perry White saying like, "Oh, can you imagine a guy got killed in a museum just for a meteor rock?" So like we don't get that scene. I'm assuming it was never filmed, but in the script, there's the whole scene of how they got the meteor in Addis Ababa, and you got Lex Luthor in a pith helmet. Yeah, and they don't steal it or kill anybody. They just go in the museum, and then they can't find the rock, and then they see that it's being used to hold a door open. So then they just take it.
Lex Luthor has some great outfits in the script too.
Yeah.
Whenever they're at the volcano, is he dressed like Cecil DeMille?
Yeah, because that's the other thing. Like again, it's like in the movie, they like just tie everything together. So Superman only really has like the one encounter with Lex Luthor in the final film. He comes down, has the encounter, launches the missiles, gives him the kryptonite. Where in this, there's like a series of encounters with varying outcomes. And it's just like, yeah, they marry it together and it works. So one of them, yeah, like you said, they're at Mount Vesuvius. Mount Vesuvius is erupting, and Superman shows up, and he's there he's going to blow it out or whatever. But then he sees like people down in it. So then he flies down, and he sees that it's Lex Luthor in a Cecil B. DeMille outfit.
I love that.
Creating a fake volcanic eruption. He's like, got all this fake lava and stuff going on, and then that's where he flings the kryptonite rock at Superman, and then the volcano actually really starts explode. Like the hoax becomes reality, and the volcano starts exploding, and Superman can't do anything. He's got the kryptonite, and then Lex's gang run out, and they kind of like leave Miss Tessmacher, and they don't. They kind of like, yeah, whatever, who cares? And she's kind of stuck there, and then that's where she like makes the deal with Superman of like, if I get rid of this kryptonite, will you help me get out of here? Like none of this stuff about the mother in Hackensack. That's all like Tom Mankiewicz.
What a funny bit too. He's like. Doesn't even like really explain it. They're like, there's a nuclear missile heading for Hackensack, New Jersey.
Yeah, in this version of the script, there's just one missile. it's not two missiles, you know, like again, all this, you know, it really is interesting seeing like how it gets from here to there and how those different decisions play out.
I love, that's what I love about reading these scripts.
Yeah, I'm really like interested in the creative process and yeah, you really see it. So then he she takes the kryptonite, throws it in the lava, and then they fly out together. And you know, Lex Luthor's almost kind of like, oh yeah, I was wondering where you were. Like, oh, you're pretty slow. And so after that, like, Clark goes back to the Daily Planet, and he's like real frustrated, and then he like starts to tear a phone book in half. Again, all this like great business,
and like the old school strongman style as they're putting in there. Yeah. It's like
the thing that I'd always heard that was like the damning condemnation of Mario Puzo's script was that it's like the old Adam West Batman TV show, and there's cameos. Like you know, in the old Batman show, they'd be climbing up the wall, and then like Werner Klemperer from Hogan's Heroes would like pop his head out, and they'd have a little banter with him, and it would always be like it was like like the kayfabe or whatever, where it's like they're talking to Colonel Klink, you know, and like, okay, how did Colonel Klink end up in Gotham City? How are they like chummy with him, you know? So and so like the damning thing I'd always heard about this script was like, there's a scene where Superman meets Kojak, and he says, "Who loves you, baby?" And he's got his lollipop, and it's like, can you imagine? You know, and so I was reading this script, and I was like, I sure hope this is the draft that has Kojak, and
you better believe it.
It does, but it's not the goof that I was led to believe. It's like he's looking for Lex Luthor, who in the script is the traditional Lex Luthor. He dresses all in black and is bald. And so he's like scanning for like bald heads, and then he's flying around, and then he thinks he sees Luthor, and then he like grabs him, and then he turns around, and it's Telly Savalas, and he's got a lollipop, and he says, "Hey, Superman, who loves you, baby?"
When I read it, I was like, "This checks out."
Yeah, like I could see that. Like even in a movie today, like there's scenes like that where it's like you think you're about to bust the guy, and then it turns around and it's somebody else, and it's like a comedic moment. But it like, yes, it's funny, but it still is organic.
Yeah, I was like, Superman just guess what? Superman just saw Kojak.
Yeah, it's not like a cameo. Like it really it is a pretty good gag.
Yeah,
and it works. It works. I was so happy to see that because I thought like Mario Puzo, I couldn't find like the pure Puzo script, so I was like I sure hope Who Loves You, Baby and Kojak is still in.
Yeah, like the hopefully we I don't know if we ever see, was his original one was like really long, wasn't it? Like it was like a huge script.
Yeah, it was epic, and it was supposed to sort of cover Superman 1 and 2 all in one script, and this script just like ends at the end of Superman 1.
Like a cliffhanger.
Yeah, like the cliffhanger. It doesn't give the full thing. But Lex Luthor and Miss Tessmacher, and like again, it's like one thing after another. It's almost like a silent movie or something. So now Lex Luthor and Miss Tessmacher are flying in a plane, and he's like, "Let's get high," and she's like, "Oh, I didn't bring anything," and then he's like, "No, I mean the plane," and then they go like a lot of like drug humor.
One of the writers, was definitely rocking some drugs during this.
After all these little misadventures, we finally get to like where like all the stuff got cut out, and then now we're back to like where the script would have been, where now Superman finally catches up with Lex Luthor for the last time, and he's in his lair, and Lex is explaining his idea that he's like got control of this missile, and he's going to launch, and he talks about garage door openers, because I guess like maybe TV remotes didn't exist at this point. So if you're going to describe to somebody, the way I'm going to change the course of this, it's like a garage door opener.
It had to be the biggest deal because that there was like a whole page of that. And I was like, okay, I'm kind of like into this right now. He's like, every schlub in Kansas has a garage door clicker, and he's like, let me explain how they work.
Yeah, and so that's how he's going to change the course of this missile. It's like a version of a garage door opener, and he's got this model that we've seen like through this script. And it's got Pancho's Taco Palace. They keep referencing Pancho's Taco Palace. This like little, and like that's like ground zero of where the missile is going to go. and then we cut to like a scene of Lois at Pancho's Taco Palace using the payphone to call, and it's like, okay, and then we see the bomb hit, and you know, it explodes, you know, Pancho's Taco Palace explodes, and we see all this like upheaval and stuff, you know, of the disaster, and then you see Lex Luthor's face in the background, and you realize, oh, this was the model. So it's kind of interesting the way, like in the movie, that the special effects of the actual explosion do kind of like very evident of being a model.
Yeah, and like the that's where I think in the movie Lois gets caught up in like an avalanche, I think.
Yeah. So in here, like, so Lex says that this you know, this whole thing that I'm telling you about, it already happened. You know, like I already did it. This missile's on its way. So like all the kryptonite stuff already happened earlier. So it's like, it's not, you know, where the kryptonite is like a very important part of this scene in the final movie. In here, that's already, so it's just, you know, Superman realizes what's happening, and Lex Luthor tells him, even as fast as you are, you still can't catch this thing. Like, I kept you stalled here long enough. And so Superman gets real mad. He grabs Lex Luthor and throws him in that aquarium with like all the, you know.
What a great, like,
a great payoff.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, Chekhov's gun. So then Superman flies through the ceiling, you know, just like in the movie, and then he's chasing this missile that's about to hit where Lois Lane is doing her phone call. Then he grabs it and he like redirects it, goes off into space, and then it blows up the Phantom Zone. It blows a hole in the Phantom Zone. The criminals get out, and then it's like, to be continued. Yeah. So it was like a pure cliffhanger. Like, that is a very unsatisfying ending compared to what's in the actual movie. Like, where there's all this like anguish, and like Lois dies, and he, you know, he's like upset, and he rebels against his like. I mean, that's a pretty huge thing to be missing. You know. Could
you imagine, like, you know, in retrospect, we know it's a big hit. We know these kinds of movies are profitable. Could you imagine reading the screenplay from Jump Street and getting to a cliffhanger?
Like, I mean, I think people would demand their money back if because the movie just ended. Like, there's no capper. Like I understand having a cliffhanger, but you got to have some kind of resolution, and then then the shock. So like, it was kind of amazing when I got to that point in this, and it's like, wow, that really, like, that whole third act is like that again, we're seeing what Tom Mankiewicz and Donner brought to it when
he's like, I hope Mario's like, did you like the screenplay? He's like, you're gonna love it when I get around to writing Superman 2.
Yeah. You know, we got, you know, like it answered a lot of my questions that I'd had about this. And again, there's a ton of like great little gags and business. There's like a scene in Clark Kent's apartment where I don't think we ever saw Clark Kent's apartment in those movies.
No.
But in here, it's Clark Kent's apartment, and it's got like clown prints hanging up and stuff. And then he's like sitting on his couch, like, you know, leaning back in the Superman suit, watching TV and watching like his TV appearances, like all the little.
What one of the great movies of all time.
Yeah, and like, you know. Going into like Superman 2 and the Donner cut and stuff, like, you know, it would have been great to see, like, you know, to have like Donner being able to do like back then.
I know, his like version. Now it's like commonplace. Like, they're like, all right, we're gonna film all 3 Hobbit movies.
Yeah, like, because the first time I'd heard about that was like with the Back to the Future series. It's like, okay, we're filming 2 and 3 together, and it's like, oh, that's interesting. But yeah, I later learned that, oh, well, they actually did it, you know, back in the 70s with Superman.
When I was watching it, I got to at the very end of the credits, it said Superman 2 coming next year.
Yeah, you'd get those things of like, you know, James Bond will return. Yeah, you know, and the Donner cut, you know, opens with this like amazing scene, like the best scene in the series, really, of. You know, and to imagine it ended up on the cutting room floor all these years. I can imagine how furious like the cast was that their best moment. But it's like, you know, Lois is looking at the newspaper, a picture of Superman, and then she's looking at Clark Kent in the Daily Planet offices, and then she gets out a Sharpie and starts drawing glasses and a hat and a suit over Superman, and then she's like, I know you're Superman, and I'm so sure of it. I'm gonna bet my life on it. I'm gonna jump, and she jumps out the window, and then now, you know, he has to rescue her without exposing his secret identity.
I love when he makes that awning like pop out.
Yeah, and all, like I did read a little bit of the Superman 2 script.
Okay.
In preparation for this, and that scene's there, and it's like it's got a lot of extra like comedic beats to it too. This was the Superman 2 draft with Tom Mankiewicz and Richard Donner involved. So it like starts off with like a montage of like all the things that happened in Superman 1, and then it's like a British fox hunt is going on. And then Superman, like they're about to catch the fox, and then Superman's like protecting the fox, and he's like, "You guys, why don't you pick on somebody your own size?" And then they call him like that git or whatever. And then we're at the Daily Planet, and that whole scene plays out. And then, but yeah, like so the thing, like you said, with the awning, all that happens. Like so he doesn't want to expose himself as Superman, so she's falling. He runs at super speed to the bottom, and then uses his heat vision to get the awning to flip out. Now, in the script, not in the movie, at this point, the awning is for a bakery, and there's these two guys carrying a giant wedding cake.
I love these like the cliche. Like,
it's Buster Keaton.
I know, I love it.
And so they're carrying this wedding cake, and then Lois bounces, and you think like, okay, Lois is going to land in this wedding cake or whatever. She bounces off the awning. And the guys are under the awning with the cakes. The cake's fine. She lands on this fruit truck. All this fruit is like she's covered in fruit, which is in the Donner cut. But then there's more. Perry White and Jimmy Olsen come out of the building, and Perry White's given some kind of speech, and then he slips on a banana peel. He slips on a banana peel from the fruit stand, and then he's like, "Whoa!" and he slides, and then he knocks into the bakers, and then they throw the wedding cake, and the wedding cake hits Lois right in the face. So it's like this extra bit of business that didn't make it in the Donner cut.
Like every time I see like a watermelon stand on the side of the road, or two guys carrying a pane of glass, I have to drive my car through it.
Yeah. Any last thoughts about Superman or any of it?
Just, it's great to revisit. It's been too long since I've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
It really has been a couple years, and it was nice to see it again. And it's better than I remember it.
Like every time I watch it,
it gets better.
Yeah, it's better than
the
my
last time.
recollection of it. It really is amazing that way. Because yeah, like I loved it when I was a little kid, and then hadn't seen it in a while. Got a little bit older. Was in my teen years. Cynical teenager, and I like rented it at the VHS rental place. And I rented it to goof on it. Like me and my friend, I thought like we were gonna.
You're gonna riff it.
Yeah, we were gonna riff it because it's like
boy.
we figured. Oh yeah, it's cheesy. This is dumb. And then we watched, and we were like silent for the whole like we were just blown away. Like I couldn't believe how good it was, and I've just been huge fan ever since.
And it's like it's a nice compliment to Batman, different than Batman.
Yeah.
So it's nice to like.
There was like a movie that came out in like either the late 80s or early 90s. I forget what it's called. It was
who was in that?
It was called Broadcast News or something maybe. I think it was called Broadcast News.
Yeah, I know that.
And it was Michael Keaton was in it. It was like a screwball comedy kind of thing. And Michael Keaton was in it, and Christopher Reeve were in it, and they were kind of like, they had this adversarial relationship, and like that's what everybody was saying. It's like, come on, let's see the Superman and Batman movie, like do that next, because they had this great chemistry and stuff.
Well, I'm gonna have to rent that one.
Yeah, when Kevin Smith had written like a script for like Superman, Death of Superman movie, like in the 90s.
Is that the Nick Cage one?
Yeah, the Nick Cage one, and Tim Burton was going to direct it. Like the big thing that like, when you read that script, that back then this part leaked that gave everybody goosebumps was like at Superman's funeral, Batman couldn't be there, but he gives this video message, like this video eulogy, and it's Michael Keaton Batman, and it's like, like it was we're just a little early for like a DC universe, or like a MCU kind of,
like that was like the forerunner.
Yeah, it just didn't happen, but man, how great would that have been?
It was nice to see the Donner cut.
Yeah, I'm glad you were able to check that out, because like I'm a huge fan of it, and like when you're talking about like the Zack Snyder cut of just like Donner cut's like the original,
Yeah, it's nice. I always like it when somebody's like you got the theatrical version, but it's the Dick Donner's vision. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really, again, it's a compromised work because, he had filmed 75% of Superman 2. So it didn't have all the scenes he intended, but it's still, I think it holds together really nice.
Yeah.
And having Marlon Brando in it just adds so much and builds on the first Superman.
It was nice to see Brando's scenes in there.
Yeah. That's like, that and the scene we described of Lois Lane jumping out a window, like those are worth the price of admission alone.
Heck yeah, like the his monologue from I think it was from Superman the movie. They used that monologue in the Superman Returns teaser.
Yeah,
and I think that's one of the best trailers ever made. Honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Superman Returns, and I know it's another one of those movies a lot of people are like, oh, it's not so great, whatever. But I think it is like your mileage with that movie is determined by how much of a fan you are of the Christopher Reeve Superman, and I'm a huge fan of that. So I was completely on board for Superman Returns.
And then that theme holds a lot of carries a lot of weight.
Well, you know what? I think that we could probably devote a whole episode to John Williams themes.
I think you're right.
Yeah. So maybe we could try that.
That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah. Maybe later this week we'll release an episode with talking about
at a future date and a future time.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for joining us for this appreciation and analysis of Superman. You've been watching Total Recall. I'm Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby: The Epic Life of the King of Comics, which is available in stores and online. And you can follow me at Tom Scioli, one word, on Twitter, or you can follow me on Instagram at Tom_Scioli.
I'm Matt Zeoli, and you can follow me on Instagram at cinema_tomb. And can folks follow the show here?
Oh yeah, follow the show. Follow Total Recall at Total Recall Show, all one word, on Twitter, and at Total_Recall_Show on Instagram. See you later.
Who loves you, baby?